I'm Aaron Sagers, and this is Talking Strange.
Aloha, spooky nerds, and welcome to this paranormal pop culture chat with Den of Geek.com and hosted by yours truly. I'm Aaron Sagers. I'm a author, a journalist, occasional TV host, and pundit and producer, and also just researcher of all things weird. And super excited to be having this chat today because it's the group of people that I'm gathering together. These are great people, and I'm fortunate to work alongside them. And in fact, for 4 seasons now, Paranormal Caught On Camera on Travel Channel and now Discovery Plus has presented strange and unusual footage from around the globe, whether it's ghosts or alleged ghosts, UFOs, cryptids, the stuff of urban legends, creepypasta, folklore, myth. It's all out there. And whether you believe the footage or not, this panel of analysts give context and insight and a little bit of a history lesson. And overall, they speculate, not validate. They talk about what these things could be and pose interesting questions. And we just had our season 4 finale, and it's not really spoiling anything to say. Season 5 is right around the corner, so there is more to come. And we are just going to nerd out and chat about the season and just talk about the show overall. So I'm going to go through and bring these folks in. And wherever you are, maybe they can't hear you, but they can sense your applause from wherever in the world you are. So make some virtual noise for Brian J. Kano. He is our paranormal investigator. Hey there, Brian.
Hey.
To the show. The creator and host of the Monsters Among Us podcast, a excellent guy, and I'm happy to see him joining us, Derek Hayes. Hello, my
Those
friend.
Those are all
hey,
lies, but thanks for having me.
Well, I lie for the people out there. And a author, researcher. We can also see him on Expedition Bigfoot, Ronnie LeBlanc. Hey, Ronnie.
Hey, guys. Sheba.
Thanks for joining. And she is a folklorist, an academic, and I think the person that is I think the only doctor amongst us, Dr. Lynn S. McNeil. Hey, Lynn, thanks for joining today.
Not the kind of doctor you want on your flight if you have a heart attack.
But you could talk about the folklore and urban legends associated with, and these are the 2 Marks. They're editors, they're founders of Weird New Jersey, and I'm going to bring them in. Mark Moran and Mark Skirman. Hey, guys.
Hello, everybody.
Hey. What am I doing?
Hey.
And we also have his paranormal investigator. He's one of the other New York crew here, Dan Sturgis. Bring him in. Hey, Dan.
Hey, guys.
Hey.
What's happening?
I don't think I forgot. I think that's everybody. I will say, unfortunately, Sapphire Sandalo and also Rachel Sam Evans, they were going to try to join us. They're not able to, but they send their warm regards to us. And Susan Slaughter is potentially on the way. We're waiting for Susan. I'm sure she's up to some sort of ghosty business. And I would say that the other kind of unofficial cast member that sadly could not join us today is Dobby.
Dobby's free.
The most famous member of this entire show is Dobby the house elf. So with that said, let's dive right in, and we also want to hear from you guys if you have questions about season 4 or about the entire show. Just lay them on us. I'm going to say no holds barred for me. You can ask anything, and I will answer. And well, let's start with our friend Dobby. Would you say that is the most famous piece of footage that we have shown on Paranormal Caught on Camera, or has there been another one that people kind of always bring up to you? Anyone can jump in, but I'll start with Brian. Why don't you lead with that?
I think with that one, when I first saw it, it came to my attention, as with so many other things, Twitter, and William Shatner commented on it. And it was just something that he just shot holes in it with, ironically, logic. And I said, and when I first saw the clip, I thought, ooh, this would be great for the show. Oh, Shatner doesn't like it. No, let's stay away from it. And then 6 months later, we were all watching it. And I'm just happy that I got to say the words, Dobby is free on national television.
Right. It's a great claim to fame. I mean, I love it. I love the Dobby footage. I don't know. Anyone else want to weigh in? Is this the most famous clip that people want to talk about with you guys?
I think when I first saw it, I said to the camera crew, I said, this is the first time I ever laughed out loud at something paranormal, because it was just so odd and weird, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's hard to explain it logically. I mean, yeah, you could say it's some weird kid wearing his underwear on his head, but those moves aren't easy to make. If you think they are, try it yourself in your own driveway. It's something not right about that physicality.
I like that Mark assumes that I haven't tried it. It's just normally when I'm caught walking outside with my underwear on my head, someone calls the cops before anyone gets a chance to film it. So
I feel like this is where I always try to figure out if I'm allowed to talk about copyrighted things. Like, am I allowed to say house elf, or does J.K. Rowling own that phrase? Can I talk about Dobby or Dementors or whatever? How generalized can we be with this?
I think on behalf of Aaron and I, who seem
terms
to compete for the references, no, you're not allowed to mention those things.
Yeah. For me, I try to slip it in and assume, my hope is that either a producer or researcher doesn't notice it when I slide in a little bit of a quote, typically the Ghostbusters one, the deep dive Ghostbusters one, they might make it through. I will say, and then I'll ask the question, my favorite that got through was, I'm not saying it's aliens, but it's aliens. That made it on air.
That's awesome.
Little Georgie.
I'm shocked by it. I got a tweet from Giorgio too. Lovely guy, Giorgio. But is there any line that you guys have given throughout the course of this show that you're surprised made it across? I'll throw to Dan first, because I haven't heard from Dan yet.
Well, I haven't watched the show much. I don't get a chance to watch the show much, so I don't know what has made it on or what it's not. But I know when I'm doing the interview, some of the stuff is pretty outrageous, and I'll make some comments, and whoever I'm talking to goes, Dan, you don't want to be on TV this week, do you? I said, well, what I think. So have you guys ever, had to talk about a clip that you were just really sure it was just fake? Can we even say that word, fake, when we're talking about these clips? But yeah, I mean, I've discussed things where I was like, yeah, I don't even know what to say. I don't know. And sure enough, it's not on TV that week. And
well, they they do say if you don't believe what the clip is, you can say that. It doesn't get on TV, but you can
no, I do quite often. So
I always get and if it were real, what would you be saying right now? And then I'm just sort of like, well, now I know what's getting used and what isn't.
To me, this looks like an example of whatever, but I'm not saying that that's what's happening here, but it looks like an example of what could be poltergeist effect or whatever the case is.
For me, if I say something and then after I say it, I immediately shake my head, that makes the air every single time.
That's the key.
It doesn't matter what it's about or what it is, every single time.
I heard you say, no, I want to say that again, but a little different.
Anytime
Go
Anytime I say something that I know is going to be inflammatory, I kind of put my hand up to block my face. I'm like, all right, guys, I'm talking to you. You can't use this. It's going to mess up the shot. I need you to know, here are my true feelings.
That's so smart. I just end up it's not from season 4, but the one that I realized my downfall moment was that one where the guy sees, Jesus in the sky, and the first commentary is me going, I think it's probably Jesus. And I realized, like, the minute I said those words, I was like, oh, that's gonna make it in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Kano's tip of just throwing that up. Actually, that is smart.
Now I know.
Clever.
And anything that you were happy that made it, that you were surprised that made it throughout this run.
I think the ones that I like are where there's a genuine reaction, where I don't think anybody would think you were faking it. A really a genuine reaction, whether it be oh, this is ridiculous, and that you can make a joke about it, or something that was really astounding, and you that comes across that you're not such a quote expert that you don't find some of this stuff really, really perplexing.
I think that's a great point, Mark, and I kind of want to follow up on that because Brian and I have talked about this, and I talk about this when I do various Comic-Cons and whatnot, that I take the approach of some of the footage we look at when I encounter people out in public. They're like, oh, that's just too good to be true. It was like a little too clear. It was like it was in a full frame and it lasted too long. I'm like, well, that's kind of what we want, because whenever it's grainy and it's slightly,
which is 90% of the time,
right.
Yeah. That's when people are like, oh, if only it was clearer, if only it was in focus. I'm like, what if there are things out there that really are that good and maybe true, like with the quality? I mean, am I in the deep end on this, or is there something to be said about that?
Well, Aaron, what would you do in this situation? Aren't you totally scared if you were in their place? We get asked these questions all the time. Like, okay, whether we believe it or not, what would we do if we were in that situation, or what advice would we have? And I find myself saying for the past 5 seasons, don't panic. And then after that, I'm like, well, I don't know, because I'm not in that situation. So It's hard for me to say.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys ever find yourself lying when you're answering that question? I think I always did, where they would ask, what would you do in this situation? And I always felt the need to say, well, I would get out of the house, obviously, but that's not really what I would do. I think I would chase whatever was making the odd sound or the apparition or whatever until I caught up with it. Probably I changed my mind.
Yeah. You say that, Derek, but all of these ghost hunters that seem to spend endless hours, like in a house where nothing is happening, when something does happen, the first thing they do is run. It's like, this is why you came.
This is why it's all still a big mystery, for that exact reason right there.
Yeah.
I feel like
get more ad dollars.
Half of my interpretations are like, why aren't they calling 911? Like, there's obviously someone in the house. They're being burglarized. This is incredibly dangerous. Like, that would be what I would do, like, a large percentage of the time, I think, is just call the police.
Well, I think doing this show already, I guess, as working as a journalist, I've always tried to put myself in the mind of someone and think about how they would react to certain things. But doing this show, it is like a little bit of a psychological profile, because you are wondering, like, okay, yeah, what would a person do in this? And anymore, this idea of, why would they automatically start filming if it was something scary? I'm like, these phones are an extension of us now. Of course, automatically people reach for these things without thinking. That doesn't surprise me that's the go-to for a lot of people. Derek, I saw you nodding your head on that. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's not a red flag anymore. It used to be, in the days of VHS and camcorders and that kind of thing. Why are they filming and suddenly a Bigfoot walks in the frame? But now people are constantly filming, so you're right. It doesn't even raise an eyebrow at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it does lend a lot to a clip when they're clearly not trying to find a ghost. They're filming something completely innocuous, just some I don't know, skateboarding or something that people would film, and the last thing you expect to see is an apparition. I think that validates a lot of these videos is the fact that people are completely accidentally capturing things.
Mm-hmm. Do any of you find? Oh, go on, Dan.
I said those are my favorite clips. I love those clips when somebody catches something by accident. So yeah, I agree with you there, Mark. Those are the best.
Do any of you find that are people, I guess, getting really savvy? Not even about trickery elements, because of course that's something we're always combating. But do you think people have expanded their notions of what's out there through the course of this show? Has this show actually added to some sort of larger paranormal discussion and conversation? Lynn, why don't you start on that, actually?
I was going to say, I think so, absolutely, because we sort of are handed this traditional set of interpretations for what the paranormal can contain. And yet we have seen so many clips that clearly are not easily categorized in one of the ways that we are most familiar with. I mean, we get sort of these like glitch in the matrix compilations, that get, or like the fact that one whole category of clips we get is just mysterious. And it's like, so what do we call that? We don't have a name for it. But I think more even than the fact that we always have these things to film with is all of the passive recording that's going on, doorbell cameras and security cameras and closed circuit televisions. Like they have no agenda and they catch stuff anyway. And that, I think, is one of the most telling things that gives us sort of this whole new buffet of stuff to consider.
Mm-hmm. Have you encountered a clip during your time on this show, and anyone weigh in on this, that has actually legitimately creeped you out?
Aswang.
Aswang's a good one. And Aswang, what I like a lot about was that season 2, 3, 3. And for those that don't know it, that are watching, it was in Singapore, I believe, or
I don't have Sting's number.
Yeah.
If you did, we'd be hanging out a lot more.
I know, right? But the Aswang, what I like about it is that not only was the footage interesting, where it looked like this form kind of materialized through the security gates, but I don't know of another show like this, and I think all of us have done a lot of these shows. I don't know of another show like this where the word Aswang has ever been introduced.
Well, I got to tell you, I mean, just in being on this show, when I got first tapped for it, I was season 1, episode 1, me, Rosemary, the original crew. When I first got tapped for this, I wasn't sure, because I envisioned, some of those TV shows where they have like people from Different Strokes and old wrestlers commenting on silly videos, and I didn't want it to be that. But when I saw Rosemary as part of the lineup, I said, "Ooh, this is definitely something I want to do." And just in commenting on all the videos, and I grabbed here's all notes I've made over the years for things that I had to research, because I didn't necessarily know everything about what I was watching. So I know I've learned a lot more about ufology, about cryptozoology, just so that I feel that I have something to contribute when it comes along. And I think being on the show and seeing the videos, I've learned so much more. I feel the audience has got to have been introduced to more just through us existing and talking about it.
Yeah. I mean, that's always, I think one of my favorite aspects is when you get to learn about some sort of folklore, whether it be, in the Far East or something that you wouldn't have otherwise encountered. Yet at the same time, it's usually so easily relatable to a legend that we have here in the States. Mark and I have been chronicling, through the Weird US series, these legends, and while they all have very unique aspects to them, there are some central archetypal themes, and it's really interesting to see them show up in Thailand, or Indonesia, and they're almost identical. There's something in the human nature where so this sort of mythology is really a human thing, not necessarily just a cultural thing.
Well,
I think that's a great point, because like it does seem like we're seeing these patterns, and this show has allowed us to kind of compare those patterns across cultures. And Lynn, obviously, I want you to respond to that as well.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I think one of the best things, the things that I love about this show, and that I regularly have to, remind my department of, to be like, this is legitimate academic work that I'm doing. But it's the idea that the source of these clips is from all the people in the world. It's not just professional paranormal investigators. It is sometimes, but it's not a set group of people who are like, we've decided what's important, we've decided what's worth investigating. It's what do the people in the places they live, with the belief traditions they have, what do they find worth noticing? What do they call it? How do they classify it? And I mean, we can disagree on that, but people are the experts on their own belief traditions. And so we sort of get to follow their lead, maybe expand on it, come up with, different ideas, but it starts with people themselves contextualizing the stuff for us. And that's where I think, we're winning. I don't know who we're beating, but everybody else.
Well, I mean, I think that I am really proud of this show in that way that, we've cast a very wide net across the globe and talk about a lot of different things. And it's like, Aswang, Domo Voy. I remember when we got a clip, I forget which season it was, where it was the supposed Brazilian werewolf. And for me, it's not about, I'm not saying it most certainly is or isn't, but what it is I lived in Brazil. I know some of those stories. And I'm like, oh, that's a lobosoma. That's what they're talking about right there. How wild is that we get to talk about that, For my cryptid guys, I almost said crypto guys, but that's different because Ronnie and Derek, have you found that the idea of, let's say, Sasquatch and the various iterations of Sasquatch that are out there, are you finding that people have kind of become more educated about, oh, this isn't just Pacific Northwest, this is in different parts of the world and even down, in Florida and things like that?
Yeah, you start to hear people talking about the wood booger and different. You don't think people would start to get, but now I think that the show is actually creating that awareness, and that there's regionally like these different stories, and they're all attributed to a Bigfoot-like creature or a version of that, So it's just amazing that you hear about more and more of these, not just in the U.S., but on a global scale.
One of the things I tried to do in my interviews was kind of bring in other legends that are similar to what we're talking about. So if we're showing, I can't remember if we did this, but like the Honey Island swamp monster or something like that. I'm like, you think that's crazy? What do you hear about the Fouke monster or the skunk ape or something? You kind of drag in these other legends that are associated, that are similar, and even regionally similar. And suddenly people expand their thinking on it. Well, if it happened here, here, and here, maybe there's something to it.
Right.
Derek, I throw the ball to you so much, especially when it comes to crypto. They're like, well, what else could it be? I'm like, Derek will know. Throw the ball to him.
Every time I had to have some other version of what we're seeing somewhere. It didn't always make the air, but I always brought it to the table.
Then that's it. It's like, I have found that with the producers that they have encouraged, like, providing more historical context, and doesn't always make it, or maybe a small snippet of it makes it, but they always seem interested in hearing about these other elements. So Mark and Mark, I'm curious. Where do you think is? I'm from Florida, so I think Florida is definitely probably one of the weirdest spots. But from your experience, and then working on this show and the Weird series, where do you think are the weirdest parts of the U.S.?
Well, that's kind of a hard question. It's kind of like all over the place.
Well, I always have one answer that I kind of a stock answer, because everybody says that as we travel around the country. And I said, we've done a book on just about every other state, but we've done 2 books on New Jersey and 58 issues of a magazine. I don't know if you could do that in Iowa. There are certain places, but I mean, there are certainly states where we can tell that the books are, well, we know the material was great, but the popularity of the books is probably greatest outside of New Jersey, in Florida, Texas, Wisconsin, and Michigan. It jumps around, but Pennsylvania was tremendous for some reason. Who would imagine that Pennsylvania was, had embraced weird so much? But they certainly did.
I've come to find out that when we do these interviews, they will ask, "Well, do you know of any other local legend that's kind of like this in Iowa?" And off the top of my head, I don't. I do. I just don't.
Yeah.
I have to do the research. If they asked that question before the interview, then I would have my notes.
That's why it pays to know a little bit about everything.
Yeah. I feel like a failure a lot on that front, because they'll just be like, "So do you know of anything else in world folklore that resembles this?" And I'm like, "Oh crap, they think I do." And I'm like, my answer is like,
it's like, you do, I just don't have it with me.
Yeah.
I mean,
Sometimes the reverse is also true. Like, typically they put me on for let's think about this, and I'll give them a big topic, and time again they won't use it, so I'll keep saying it in different episodes. Like, eventually they're going to use it. Hopefully this is a good topic, you got to use it. And certain producers will be like, "Oh yeah, that's great." Others will just kind of,
I think they definitely listen, and I think that it's interesting that they're open to take like a comment that I've made, and then all of a sudden weave it into the story that they're telling. Like you talk about these different big hairy men, whether it be the Fuki monster or the Minerva mud monster or something, and the next thing you know, like after I say that on screen, they'll do like they'll roll that into the story. I'll say, "Well, this isn't the first time a big hairy man was seen in this part of the state," and
that's where I come in with my second story.
Right. It is funny how many show of hands has said something that maybe didn't make it to the episode, but was used in an intro, a voiceover from our producer Paul.
I think I've seen that. Yeah.
Verbatim, probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
Which is okay. I mean, because they're still utilizing it. Are there places in the country? Well, I mean, again, this is a global, but are there places that you're surprised that we're not getting more footage from? I'll start by saying, I mean, living in New York City, living in Brooklyn, I'm surprised that we just don't get more footage from
New York City. Yeah. I'm surprised. Long Island and New York City. That's what I was thinking as well, Aaron. Is so much stuff going on out on Long Island. I grew up out on Long Island, and there were legends and dark masses in everybody's backyard if you lived in the woods, and the same thing, like you said, New York City. There's so much going on in New York City, and Brian, I'm sure you can attest to this too. If we wanted to do investigations every single weekend, we could. And I know people have friends of mine who have watched the show have approached me and said, I think I saw a UFO over Central Park last night. What do you think? And I'm like, well, I'm the worst person to talk to about that. But New York City's got so much going on, and I don't know if it's just people are so busy and they're looking at their phones and they're not looking up or paying attention, or just New York City's so freaking weird that you just take it for granted that something odd is going to happen.
It's true. Oh, even John Lennon said there's UFOs over New York, and I ain't too surprised.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah,
exactly.
And even with those UFO video clips, it's really hard to. That's the hardest thing to say. What are they?
Right.
Or
why
Chinese
why are they coming here?
Clips haven't really. other than their orb lights in the sky, I mean, you don't know what they are. I mean, it's hard. I just give my gut reaction.
There's
I-
a lot
Then
more
they
than
say,
the
well, if
ones.
it was alien, then
I find the lights in the sky ones particularly difficult, but I also find myself frequently saying during the interview segments, like, I don't even know if this is, is this still paranormal or is this just normal? Because this is now part of New York Times front page,
Right.
Well, Aaron, you and I have talked about this a couple of times where when it comes to social media, the things that are explainable, like especially the UFO videos that happen down in Florida where we're not there, so we're not used to seeing it, and we're like, wow, what's this? And they're like, oh, it's a launch, stupid. And after the episode airs, I seem to be the spokesperson target for the trolls when it comes out. It's like, you're an idiot. I'm like, I didn't even comment on that one.
Thanks for taking the heat,
by
Ryan.
association.
I got your back, guys.
To circle back to Aaron's original question, mine was kind of the opposite. There was a place where I thought there's no way we're going to get stories from this area, and sure enough, we got several. And that's kind of my tiny hometown of Ohio. Like, we've had 3 stories from like 20 mile radius around my tiny hometown of 5,000 people.
Wow.
And I was just shocked by that. So mine was kind of the opposite.
Wow.
Ohio, though, I think Ohio is I'm gonna probably get beat up for this, but I kind of lump it together with Michigan in a way, as far as like, hey, okay, yeah, I'm already in trouble.
Sorry.
But that part of the country
Made me uncomfortable. Sorry.
Yeah, I know. Sorry. I've come to appreciate up there more as far as a hub of weirdness.
Yeah.
But you're very different places. Very
Well,
different
the
places,
entire Midwest, really, if we're going to break it down, like from Pennsylvania, like Mark said, to all the way almost to Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, those areas, that whole pocket is just full of so much strange activity. And for me, it's kind of, is there history? Are there people? Is there tragedy? Then there's going to be some great stories. And that place is full of it, with westward expansion and all that sort of thing. So
has it, for any of you, has it changed your personal views of what's possible and potentially out there as we look at any of this footage? Or has it kind of expanded your perspective on these things? Anyone can dive in there.
For me, it's just sort of confirmed, and for me that I'm not wasting my time, or I haven't made a mistake with my life choices and what I focus on. I mean, my what I was doing in New York City is 180 degrees away from what I'm doing now, and I sort of fell into it, and so seeing all these clips, and especially the ghost stuff, because I do a lot of ghost investigations. It's gone, okay, I didn't screw my life up too bad, and other people are having these experiences, and I'm going down the path that was right for me. I wasn't sure, until I started seeing all of these videos coming in. Go, all right, I'm doing the right thing for me.
It's you have not wasted your life.
Thanks,
Aaron. Do any of you?
Hey, look! Every day I'm having to wonder about that myself. Sorry, Mark.
One of you ever get anonymous emails saying, "Here's a video to look at. I think it's pretty weird."
All the time.
Yeah.
Does anyone else get a lot of letters from prisoners?
Yes.
Okay.
Mark does. I know that.
Here's you send me photos.
Just
direct from the prison yard.
No, I've got not so many prison letters, but I've gotten a lot of the emails, people asking me to, and I actually, I mean, I'm not necessarily wanting any salacious letters, but I want people to send, if they're watching, if they've captured something, I like checking that stuff out.
Yeah, I mean, the stuff, we've got about 4 or 5. We sent them over to the producers. I'm like, what are we going to do with this?
Yeah, we've actually we some of the videos that we've all commented on were sent directly to Weird New Jersey, and then we sent them off to the producers. So it's nice to have. I mean, because we can't really do anything with something like that in a magazine, you know. So it's nice to see it get the attention that it does.
I pass along a fair amount. Sorry, Brian.
There's no shortage of them when we go to the events, and the people come, they say hello, and it's usually like, "Oh, I love your show. Wait, hold on a second, I gotta find it. It's here."
Yeah.
And some of the ones we see are actually really, really good. And I say, "Yeah, send that in." That's good.
I mean,
I would love to comment on it.
There's no other vehicle for these people to send them to.
Yeah. I mean, I'm curious, does anybody else want to weigh in on what Dan responded to about has this altered kind of your own perspective out there? I mean, I feel like it has for me. I already was willing to accept all level of, or be open to all level of weirdness, but seeing the people submit it suddenly makes it even more, potentially fun and weird and possible for me. Has anybody else kind of thought about that?
I agree. I had an exact similar experience. I would say UFOs are something that have not been in my wheelhouse enormously up until this point, and I was not a disbeliever or even really a skeptic. But now I'm just sort of like, at least some percentage of what we're seeing are something that is not explainable by what we know about reality at this time. So and some of the ghost ones. I mean, I'm waiting for my day. I'm not a paranormal investigator. I always feel like the boring one out of all of the different levels of expertise that we have. Mine is the least.
Yeah, but we need a doctor too.
Thank you.
You got to hang out
if somebody gets hurt.
Ability gets.
You got to hang out with Jeff Goldblum.
That's true. That's true. That is also.
Not sorry for you.
Okay, that's fair. But I've been swayed. I feel almost as though I've had my own now experiences with the paranormal through the intimacy. I mean, I think that's a big part of it. The first person perspective camera shots that we get from people, it's like we're there with them. We're hearing their breathing, their reactions, their fear or their amazement. It brings you into that moment. I think it's an incredible thing.
Yeah. This is I'm sorry, go ahead. This is it's really are you talking, Mark?
It was getting dark. I had to find a light.
We saw you fading into the darkness. I was a little concerned. I'm like, don't go into the light, Mark.
Well, what I was going to say was that this is really not dissimilar from when Mark and I started out, in that these people are sharing their story directly with the show. Because like Mark said, where else would it be? Where else could they send it, and see it on TV and share it and get people to comment on it? When we started the magazine, this was pre-internet really. So the magazine was the only place where people could send their stories, and we wouldn't judge them. We would present them, and some of the people were crazy. But generally people were just honest and they just wanted to share their story. So it became this forum for people to share their story and not be judged and not, because if they tell their friends, they're going to say, you're crazy. But this show, I think, is very much like that, where people, they have a direct line to show what they've captured. And, there's no judgment there. It gets presented and everybody watching it make up their own mind. Do I feel like I believe this or don't I? Not everybody's going to believe every story. It's just like Abraham Lincoln said. But at least you get to consider them.
Mark, I think that's a really worthwhile point. I don't present myself as paranormal investigator, even though I've been on a lot of investigations. I approach it from the journalistic standpoint by interviewing people and saying, hey, it's okay to share this story. Like I want to hear it. I'm not gonna judge you for sharing this story. And once you allow people to do it, once they feel comfortable, they will start telling you, and then you can disseminate that, and then more people will want to share it. I think the show has been a natural culmination of where the paranormal entertainment genre has gone, because there was your magazine, and then there were some paranormal documentary shows, but then around 2004, 2005, we really saw the ascendancy of these paranormal shows, which corresponded with the rise of social media. and now people could be like talking about this stuff without being the weirdo at the PTA meeting. They could go on Facebook and be the weirdo on Facebook, and then across, social media. But now it's like, this is sort of the social media culmination of that paranormal entertainment genre.
It's probably a great release for people too, because a lot of the ghost clips seem to be real personal, and it's not like, well, I was walking down the street and I saw a ghost. Some of them, but we get clips where people are talking about, I think this might be my father, my brother took his own life, and I think so. These are real personal situations that these people are dealing with, and I think it's probably great to have a release where it's not your friend that you've talked to about it 1,000 times and they're getting bored and just yesing you to death. You've got a place where you can throw your video out there and tell your really personal story about your child that might have passed away unexpectedly, and get some feedback and some input about what might be or what might not be going on. So it's probably doing, we're having fun with it and we laugh, but there's probably some people out there that have really been a positive thing for them to get out there.
Yeah, and I think I would say I think we all kind of joke about it because it is fun to do, but also take the content, think about the content in a serious way, even when it's sometimes funny to talk about. Ronnie, I'm going to put you on the spot because since you also do Expedition Bigfoot, I'm curious, like, how working on both these shows has one influenced your approach on the other at all?
Oh, for sure. I mean, one thing is just amazing to see how many people have an experience, ones that are able to capture on video, just on the global level. But I see it now where we're out there when we're on our expeditions, we're trying to get that Patterson-Gimlin film, that undisputable footage that it's undeniable. That's what we're trying to get, coupled with eDNA and everything else. And so it's really, I think what we're doing with this show is really bringing some major awareness, and especially on the global level, like you guys were just talking about. What other source, what other platform is there aside from maybe Facebook where you can send your video and have experts analyze this thing and get some clarity on what you experience. And I think a lot of people are afraid to do that and share it with their friends, where this is much easier. You can submit something and have other people make their judgments.
Even if it's not clarity, even if it's not saying this is like definitive proof of X, Y, Z, at least posing questions and putting it into a larger context, which I think is of value. And I'm going to say, for anyone out there in the audience, we've got a lot of comments, not a lot of questions. We are winding down. So if you have a question, put it out there, and I will ask these awesome panelists that have gathered around. Since we all, I think, work on other projects outside of that, either TV, publishing, academics, has this show invaded your life at all, insofar as people bringing it up and either challenging you, asking questions when you're least expecting it, kind of bringing it up in your other elements of lives? Lynn, I'm going with you on this one because you do teach, you do work with students. Does Peacock come up?
Yes, always. And it's really, I joined in season 2. So now, there's been several seasons that I've been on. It's now common enough that, we're getting, reruns, on the Travel Channel and things. So my students, there's always, week 1 of the semester, I go through introducing myself, who I am. I've written their textbook. So, that's always stressful for them and all of this stuff. And I'll get to this point where I say, all right, who has any questions, about the syllabus, about class, and pause a moment. And then I'll say, or about anything else. And then it's just like the rest of the hour is gone talking about Paranormal Caught on Camera. So, it's really, and I try and tell them, we're not going to have a lot of discussions in this class that look like what we talk about on the show necessarily, but it's there in the background. And actually, I will say, I think one of the most important things it's done is, it's another route for a folklorist to take. And this is folklorists as academics have really had to fight for respect in the realm of popular media. The term popularizer was a bad word to be called as a folklorist because it was seen as our content is already considered so trivial. Why would we trivialize it further by treating it as fun? And one of my aims as an academic has been to try and allow fun and serious scholarship to coexist.
Yeah. Great response. Anyone else want to weigh in on that? It's a tough act to follow Lynn on that one.
I'd like to say that what she said about trivializing folklore is true, and it's really it's a terrible waste, because what people should realize is that folklore is a reflection of the human psyche. Why these things have come stayed with us for hundreds, thousands of years, and really they're cross-cultural. Really, it's like an archetypal part of the human experience. There's a reason why certain stories are universal, and it reflects on the entire psyche of being a human being. That we have certain fears of things, and a lot of these things that we're dealing with here are those fears, and that's a reason why people keep coming back to it. It's not, you can't get away from it. It's not something you can choose to say, I'm not afraid of that. People are just afraid of certain things, and everybody is, it's like just so common ground for everybody.
And everybody's got a story. Everybody's got a story, and it's, I work in the corporate field, and sometimes I'll be walking around the building and somebody will see me. Now we have to wear masks, but somebody would recognize me from the show, and they would go, and it's, you're talking to a hedge fund guy who's worth $1 billion, and all he wants to know is, are rates real? I'm like, I have no idea. It takes people out of their, the kind of mask they put on when they walk out the door, at least in New York City, and go to work, and then they go right back to childhood. And who doesn't love a good ghost story? Who doesn't like a good big story? I started in this because of the Loch Ness Monster, and so this show, I think, anyway, in my experience, has brought people to me and almost relieved that they have somebody to talk about it, because everybody's got a story. Everybody's got a story.
That's true, and it's like I've experienced it from interviewing other people, and sometimes even celebrities that are like, you find out that this show is clearly being watched by people out there. I mean, look, if it's supporting 5 seasons and 26 episodes a season, clearly people are, but occasionally someone will bring it up and be like, you're the ghosty guy or whatever, and they'll bring it up in a separate interview, which is fun. But to your point, everybody, yeah, right, everybody has a story. You hang out in a bar, and sooner or later someone's going to bring up a ghost story or some sort of UFO story or whatever, or there'll be the person that says, like, I don't believe in any of that stuff, but there was this one time,
right,
and then you're off to the races.
Happens to us constantly.
Yeah. And it has saved my butt. I was walking down the street in New York City, and this beautiful, beautiful woman came up to me, and she obviously thought she knew me. And I didn't know her. I'd never met her in my life. And she invited me to her birthday party.
I love this story.
Yeah. So I said, hey, I'm going to go. And I went, and I didn't know anybody. Turns out this woman had just recently separated from her husband. So everybody was asking who the new guy was, and I made up, everybody that talked to me, I made up a different reason how I met her. I met her in Bikram yoga. I met her in pottery class, and I didn't know anybody. And as soon as somebody was prying a little bit too much, I'd bring up the ghost stuff. And on a dime, oh my God, you're never going to believe this. And I was living in his house. And so it saved my ass at a birthday party where I crashed.
And the lesson here is approach Dan on the street and invite him to birthday parties.
We'll accept.
Like our own Bill Murray.
Yeah. Just real quickly, we are winding down, but real quickly, around the board, Chris asked, what's the creepiest video had to analyze for the show? Brian, was it the Aswang for you, or?
No, well, I mean, that was certainly creepy, but as far as one that really got to me deeply, there was one where I believe they were doing a seance or something. I think it was around a Ouija board, and it appeared as if one of the members got possessed. And for me, having been raised Catholic, things like that, we could academically look at spirits and cryptids and look at it from very afar. But when it comes to something like that, that's very visceral to one's belief, I have a hard time analyzing those from afar, and they still do creep me out.
Yeah. Down the line, Derek, how about you?
I don't know how to label this one, but I think I called it a dog man on the show, but it was in Florida or Louisiana or something. And there was a guy live streaming and he saw something. He's like, you guys won't believe this. And he goes back out the door and there's this thing that comes by. Now it looks like a horse to me. So I don't know if it's a ghost. I don't know if it's a crypt. I don't know what it is, but that one was one of my favorites.
That's a great one. Yeah. But was this the guy in like the laundromat or whatever in the laundry room where he's freaking out when he sees it?
Maybe. He was smoking a cigarette. I remember him just like nervously smoking throughout the clip. Yeah.
But I think it was Florida. Mark.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
This Mark?
Mark Moran. Yeah.
Oh, Orange Bunyan for sure. I don't know if you remember that. I don't know whether it was Malaysia or Indonesia, but they're wandering through the jungle at night, and there are these two creatures at the tree line. One is this tiny little gnome-like creature, and the other is this giant Frankenstein-like creature with this tiny little head. And they're like approaching the cameraman, and I'm just like, I don't know what this is. I don't know how or why you would fake it, but Jesus Christ, I can imagine it being there must have been absolutely terrifying.
Yeah. That I remember that's a good clip too. Any of the weird stuff, especially when it involves sort of like the Hobbit-like people out in like Malaysia, that kind of stuff. Yeah. Lynn.
So there was this one clip. It was taken, I think, in Ogden, Utah, so really close to me. But it was a guy setting up a security camera outside, and his wife or girlfriend is inside watching him set it up, and it's dangling, and he like swings it up to put it in place, and you get this super brief glimpse of a woman I mean, obviously standing behind him. She's gone the next time you see him, and they both confirm there was no woman there. And I was watching it because it's really compelling, and I was trying to pause it right on that moment when it swings past her, and I did. And the still frame of her eyes are like bright white glowing lights, and I literally screamed in my kitchen. It was like I couldn't even look at it. It was so upsetting to see so clearly this woman. And then the wife or girlfriend had said it was her friend. It was like someone she actually knew. And that to me was one of the, it's not even worth faking that. It was so quick and so brief and so compelling that sometimes I think about that at night and like have to turn all the lights on.
That was a creepy one. And I think it's always worth, I always ask the question of like, okay, could all of these be fake? In theory, yes, technology is so advanced that but again, putting yourself in the mindset of people, it's like, to what end for all these things? It's not just to get a clip on a show. It's like, so I'm always kind of wondering about that. So I think that's a good one. Also, there was the one of like slightly hanging down from the door frame, which is
I hate
that
was
a good one.
That's a bad freeze frame.
Yeah. Ronnie.
The one that I just remember positioning myself, if I was in this place when this happened, was that running scared. I think it was episode 7 from the season, and where you could hear something running straight towards the guy from the audio, but you couldn't see anything. And he literally just, moves this way. It's like any of those, or when someone's sleeping and you see their hair start being lifted up or the blankets start pulled back. Any of those are pretty creepy.
Yeah, when people are like at their most vulnerable.
Yes.
Yeah, that is creepy. Dan.
The one that I always remember, it sticks in my mind the most, is the one where the mom gave her little kid her cell phone while she was doing the laundry, and he caught his grandmother next to him. That one just sticks with me. It's that was one of the creepier ones for me.
She's somewhat veiny with sunken eyes.
Her eyes were sunken in, and then they showed, side by sides, and it's a dead ringer for, no pun intended. Well, maybe it is, but it was a dead ringer for the grandmother. It was. I think of that one often.
And Mark S.
Well, I always like watching the cryptid stuff because you just never know what's going to happen. That one where the baby was standing on the crib by itself, just standing up, that was strange.
Connor.
Remember that one?
Connor.
Yeah.
But I think the most compelling videos are the ones where these people are filming in their house and there's like books and everything just flying around the room. I mean, that is just incredible to see. And these people, they're not faking it, to saying, "Oh my God, look! I got books flying off the shelf and pens flying off everything." So those are the most compelling ones to me, to see that happen.
Yeah, I think there is indeed a lot of weirdness out there, and a lot more weirdness to come with this show. And also with each of the work that you guys do. We are out of time, but before I let you guys go, first off, thank you. It's so good sharing one screen with you all at once. I love it. I wish I could hang out with each of you in person. But how can people follow you? How can people support your work? Brian.
Neverstopsearching.com.
Derek.
Oh, that was quick. You can find me at Monsters Among Us podcast, anywhere you can find a podcast. And I just launched a brand new paranormal news program on YouTube called Para Weekly. So just search for Para Weekly to check that out.
Mark Moran.
WeirdNJ.com for all your weird needs.
I don't have to say that twice, right?
No, you're good.
Free ad time.
You can find me on Twitter. My Twitter handle's on the screen right there, Lynn S. McNeil. And at Utah State University's folklore program, where I teach.
All right. And Ronnie.
RonnieLeBlanc.com, and then Expedition Bigfoot's season 3 should be hitting us in February.
And Ronnie, I apologize. I always pronounce it Ronnie LeBlanc.
Oh yeah, it goes both ways. In Massachusetts, it's LeBlanc. Outside that, LeBlanc.
I just like the fancy approach to it.
Continue.
You can find me at SturgisParanormal.com. And I just want to give a big shout out to Brian J. Cano there, who's a big promoter of the show. So thank you from all of us. I've done a couple of events with Brian, and he's a complete pro and always pushes the show and asks people to write in. And he did that at Comic-Con. So, thank you, Brian. He's Brian's a good guy.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah. And Mark, I mean, you can
Aaron,
say something.
For this little fireside chat we had together, and I hope we can do it again soon.
Yeah. And you guys, all right. So, and for anyone out there, you can follow me, patreon.com/Aaron Sagers. Check out the Nightmarica podcast at Aaron Sagers on Instagram and Twitter. Also, I want to thank Den of Geek for supporting the paranormal content and allowing us to do this. And before I let everyone go, I do want to just plug that we're going to be doing another chat tomorrow. We are talking to Adam Berry and Amy Bruni from Kindred Spirits. Their 6th season of Kindred Spirits premieres on December 18th on Travel Channel and Discovery Plus. That is tomorrow at 4 p.m. right here. So come back for that. Guys, thank you so much. Thank you for your time, and had a lot of great laughs. And I hope you each have happy holidays and a good new year. Here's to 2022. May it be less like 2020 or less like 2021. But you guys hang out backstage for 1 second. I'm going to end this broadcast and I'm going to say goodbye to you again. All right. But thank you guys. And for everyone that's out there in the Den of Geek realm, the Twitch realm, for everybody that's checking out this feed, let me thank you again for being here, for having some great questions and comments and contributing to this conversation. Wherever you are, stay spooky and keep it weird.